Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, see that little subscribe button at the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, click that subscribe button. Really does help our channel grow, our audience grow, and I really do appreciate it more than you know. So click that subscribe button. Appreciate your support. Now, here's the video that you came here for. Well, let's talk about that because, one, I'm really excited about this team. It's funny, right? Because, again, you talk about the retention. It's like, Coach Cal, Mr. Splash it was like that one day, which, of course, had happened 20 minutes after I did my show, of boom, these guys are back. Boom, this guy's testing the draft process. Boom, these guys are transferring in. There's your roster. See you in the summer. Have a good night. And it was like, well, shit, excuse my language, but it's like, what the hell just happened? It was a freaking tornado. And it's like, and I only bring it up because, and I think I'm even guilty of this, is you look at, even at Kentucky, they signed 7, 8, 9, whatever it was, guys over the course of the offseason. BYU adds this transfer, this team adds that transfer, and it's kind of like this trickle. Boogie Flan doesn't go to Florida until the end of, end of May, beginning of June. I just bring it up because now that the roster is set, again, I think they're kind of sort of lost in the national conversation because it got done early. The pieces that were added late were really kind of player 12, 13, 11, whatever. But what are you? I mean, I don't know even what the right way. I mean, I don't know if it's realistic expectations, your expectations, just what are we looking for this year? Because I know what I think about this group, but I'm curious for your perspective.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just taking the next step. And you mentioned the offseason. I think you're onto something with Arkansas. Maybe they're flying under the radar a little bit. And I know it's tough to say because depending on where you look, that in the way too early polls or whatever, Arkansas is probably anywhere from like 8th to 15th or something. So like people know who you are and what you got going on. But it wasn't as sexy of an offseason as a lot of those schools that you mentioned who just killed it and spent a ton of money in the portal and everything. And a lot of that's because of the retention. That's just been a key aspect for a lot of these teams lately who've made Final Four runs and cut down the nets. I mean, look at Florida last year, for example. This is I think it's a well put together roster. I do. And it wasn't so much, Cal last year doing the thing where he's like, all right, I got to have my 8 to 9 guys and that's it. It was not having any options beyond that, not having a plan when you get injured. That's why they were winding up playing with 6 guys throughout the course of the game. I like what they've done this year because he's big on, hey, I don't want to have way too many mouths to feed. Kentucky has an awesome roster. I think they're going to be really, really good this year. They have a ton of potential and upside. If I'm Mark Pope, I'm not sleeping at night because I'm like, how am I going to keep all these guys happy? What's this going to look like? There are different ways to put this thing together. Cal's doing it a little bit of a different way. I really like the idea of having, he's got about 8 guys here who he feels great about. They're going to be your bulk minute guys. They're going to be your heavy rotation guys, the guys you lean on in the big games and in SEC play. Well, and then 9 and 10 are a couple high upside, talented 4-star freshmen and guys like Isaiah Sealy, who's been better than advertised, Paolo Semedo, who's coming in, who people aren't talking about, but they should be.
You're talking about him. Every time I tune into your podcast, it's like 40 minutes straight on.
I'm telling you, man, that's my guy. That's my hot take.
It's okay.
And so you got them, and then you got, like 11 and 12 are a couple international guys, like you said, more on the ancillary side of things in the back end of the roster, but they've been playing professionally. They've got some experience. So I like the way that it's put together here. They're going to be leaning on the returners quite a bit. You got a couple 5-star freshmen in Darius Acuff and Malik Thomas that people are real excited about, but you don't have to overly rely on them. They don't have to do it all for you because you got some of these other pieces here. I think it's a good mix. We'll see what it looks like, but I think the expectation around here is, hey, don't get off to such a slow start. Now, the non-conference schedule is brutal, so they're probably going to take some losses here and there. Let's not do the 8 and 10 below 500 thing in SEC play again. Let's flip that thing around and be better in the league, get a higher seed and take the next step. Now, when Eric Musselman came to Arkansas, he did the thing where it was like, okay, they got to get the monkey off their back. They're getting to NCAA tournaments. Maybe they'll win a game, but they haven't been to a second weekend since the 90s. What's going on here? Well, he got them past that point. And so you bring John Calipari in now, and it's like, all right, the next step is to get back to that elusive Final Four. And it's been elusive for him for a little while now, too. I think first year getting to a Sweet 16 with all the factors that they had going into it wound up being a great season. You're happy with it. But can you show continued progress forward and take the next step? And I think that's the expectation around here this year.
I was going to ask, and it's kind of a two-part question. Part one kind of hinges on part two. Is one, do you think how much longer, like realistically for him? I don't have his age. I think he's 63, 64, something like that. But then two, he's going to have a team that's good enough every year. I know the tournament is a crapshoot. Do you believe that by the time he leaves, he will get Arkansas to that elusive Final Four? Because to your point, even just as an outsider, I kind of know how much it means to the fan base.
I really do think that he will. And I know people are like, well, this dude's not going to get on here and say that he won't. Right.
Sure.
But no, I do believe that. And there was a time throughout the course of the season where I wasn't so sure what it was going to look like. And I went into it thinking I need to get through this year and see what the next one looks like before we can really start making some determinations on it. For the reasons I said earlier, he was kind of put in a situation where he had to adapt, he had to change, he had to evolve just to get a team put on the floor. Well, what's it going to look like after that? Seeing the way he went about the offseason, seeing the way he's prioritized certain things with retention, the way he's going about his recruiting, seeing his comfortability, I just feel like he feels confident in what they have going on around here. So, I think they'll get there. I don't know if this is going to be the year. Maybe it'll be next year, 2 years down the road. He did joke at his press conference about, he was at Kentucky for 15 years and somewhere for 10 and somewhere for 9. And he's like, I'm going to be at Arkansas for 12 years. And then he stopped himself. He's like, there's no way I'm going to be here for 12 years. And we're not expecting that. Maybe 4 or 5 years I could see. That would take him till he's about 70 or so. I could see that maybe being the case. But as long as he's got the support, which we know that he does with NIL and everything like that, I think he's going to be in a pretty good position to win at a high level. The only caveat that I will give, though, is anytime he gets a microphone in front of his face, he goes on the stump about the transfer portal and getting this thing reeled in and figuring it all out. And we've got to have a better understanding of what's going on. There's not enough clarity. It's too murky. We don't know where the sport's headed. And that seems to be something that's really frustrating him. And he always says, if I ever get to the point where I feel like I can't help families, if I can't help these kids anymore, then I'm out, then I'm done, because that's the reason why I'm doing it at this point. And his frustration with the portal and some of those things like that, that would be the only avenue I could see to where he might call it quits a little bit sooner. I don't think it would have anything to do with what's going on at Arkansas or the success that he could have on the floor so much as just the state of the game and where it's headed. And frankly, none of us know exactly where this thing's going.
No, and I will also say this is that, early on in his time at Kentucky, he said, I'm going to, this is not a job you stay at for 10 years. And he was there for however many and ended up being 15.